Okay, this already has the shifter out of it. This is for changing the shift forks in it, a 3/4 anyway. And I took the speed sensor out of the front. Just kind of soaked it with WD-40. It's got a good bite, and I have to keep twisting on it until you can get it out. And I'm going to take these detent bolts out, and the spring and ball bearings that's underneath of it. All these. Take this cap loose. And any bolts in this, there's a 14 down here. And this has already been taken out for taking the shifter out, but it's not blocking nothing to come apart. Nope. And take this lock bolt out. And I'll stand it up. It's best to have a hole in the bench or something to let this shaft stick through if it needs to. Also, the reverse switch up on top of the transmission needs taken out. A 27mm deep well fits it just fine. Yep, it's a hole, alright. These 3 detent bolts are 12mm, and they'll have a spring and a ball bearing. It needs to be pulled out with a magnet. Do not mix them up. Nifty. 1 and 3 and blank. Store them that way. I marked the front and rear hanger bracket location, and I took a hex head 14. Take this cap plug loose. There's a snap ring got to open up in there. And take this 14mm out of the bottom front. And like I say, I already took this loose to get the shifter out. I took all of the bolts loose from around the perimeter of the back cover. This one, right in line with the rear engine mount stud, is long, and I marked it with a yellow marker. And the one directly in front of the drain plug is long, and they're both the same size. All the rest of them are the same size, and I marked it. And all the bolts are out of it, and speed sensor and the reverse backup switches out of it. Now I think I got to open that clip up when I get the cover broke loose to let the bearing slide out of that. And there's a few pry places, just be gradual about it. Popping the cover open. Plenty of time. A new shift fork. I have to lube it up before installing it. Now I broke this loose. I just drove the wedge in the front where the throwout arm is for the clutch. Not too heavy, just enough to load it. And I come around to this transmission hanger bracket and just kind of doubled it up with another one. And then put a bolt with a nut. And put a metal shim against the bell housing. And spread the load out a little bit. And then held the head of the bolt and then backed the nut off, and the housing come apart relatively easy. It wasn't bad. Now I close this snap ring up. Kind of get the seal broke loose all the way around, gradually. This clip, you take needle nose. You get this centered in this hole and then push open on both sides hard. Wiggle it, and just either the bearing will drop down on its own, or you can stick a screwdriver in there and just kind of push on it a little bit while you're opening this, wiggling this clip open, and then the bearing drops, which it's done, which is no big deal now. Alright, I've got flat chisels and punches stuck in a circle, mostly on the outer edge of the bolt in case it would happen to dent it. It won't leak on the outside of the bolt, but on the inside track it could. But I don't know. It's like I say, I'm gonna keep pushing that bearing down to lift this cover up. It's just a little preference. But it's coming up slow. Get it out of there. And once the bearing falls down, just lift it straight off. Try not to disturb any extra stuff. And you'll now be in the presence of a gizmo. That's an oil trough that steers the oil into these bearings. Reverse idler pin for it, and the broken shift fork. That's nice. Always something. And the outer case. And all that stuff is going to go back together, I guess. I'm going to degrease this outer perimeter too, and scrape any excess silicone off of it, and wash out any debris that might be in the bottom of it or around where it's working on that clip. Alright, yeah, I don't know. I don't see any big pieces in there. I guess there's some trash in it. There's some kind of wire or something down in there. I don't know what that is yet. Well, and a person would be ahead to go ahead and rebuild this transmission while it's out, put ball bearings and seals in it. But all this needs degreased on top of everything. I don't see any teeth missing. Looks like a synchronizer's still intact for the most part. Reverse. I'm going to check any of these other fingers for cracks on them, just in case I need some more parts. Clean the metal out of that. I don't know what the hell that wire is. I'm going to investigate it further. Sounds not too bad. A piece of metal or something there. Oh, it's a little noisy. A little bit, not too much. Main shaft, I think, not the counterbalance shaft. Sounds alright. Not loose or anything. Extra nice. Okay. This is just a magnet. All that trash is caught on. Just slip it up out of there. And there's a couple wire deals. I have to find out where those went. Unless it went into that oil tray. That oil tray will have to set in these divots when it goes back in there to hold it up from getting into the rear end. Got two little bumps on it there. As you're looking around, pay attention to which way this threaded hose orientated in this reverse idler shaft. Because one of the outside bolts, the 14mm, I think goes through that. You don't want to get that out of whack when your silicones are drying. Yeah, I don't know, that wire, better look and see where that goes. Maybe that's why that fourth gear got broke. The fourth gear shift fork got broke because that wire wasn't pushing it out of the way. Fell down the bottom, got run through the workings. Yep, right there it is. Just the synchronizer wires missing out of it. One on the top, not one on the bottom. Yep, that's a problem. That's going to have to be fixed. That is the problem. Just wanting to fall right back down in there. Hey, yep, that ain't good. Yeah, we'll have to order some more parts. Check the other ones, I guess. Something on there. That's just one of them. Yep, that one's there. Yep. Yeah, it's really an outfit. Notice on the 3/4 shift fork where it's broke off. Also, the third gear synchro spring's missing. So that's what was laying down in the magnet. It's what's left of the 3/4 synchro spring. And it'll just fall right in the third without no effort. The fourth gear springs on there. That's extra nice. And this bearing on top, it's got to be pulled anyway. Put that spring on there. Loose, wore out. Well, springs are on first and second. bearing number and there's the reverse idler pin. I'm going to go ahead and stick the bolt that went through the case back into this side up just to make sure it stays where it needs to be when I pull it out. I'm going to go ahead and take this mess apart. I'll start and take these two 10mm bolts out of this reverse assembly here. And I'm going to come around to the front and just put a thin layer of tape on the splines that the clutch slides on the main shaft, just to keep from tearing the old seal up. If you're overhauling it, it really wouldn't matter, which I recommend overhauling these transmissions if you're taking them apart. Just keep the reverse gear held up while you're slipping that assembly out, and it'll slide right out of there. Now I'm going to go ahead and take the reverse idler and the pin out. I got the bolt stuck in it, so I know which way it goes back in there offhand. Put it in a nice clean spot. And that looks pretty good, so that'll slide right out of there. Might put a little lube on it if you're bored. And essentially you just lift this whole mess out together, both the counterbalance shaft and the main shaft, and get the shift forks off of it as you can. I suppose you could mark on each shift fork its position if you wanted to. I got the counterbalance shaft up out of there before the other stuff, which wasn't really a problem. Just be sure not to tear this plastic oil guide up that's behind the bearing, unless you're replacing all of it. That's a big old boy. First gear, reverse. I'm going to slip the main shaft out of there with the shift forks. And the main shaft's out of there. There's a reverse actuator deal standing there. The two shift forks came out with the main shaft. At the end of the main shaft, be sure not to lose this double washer here. And it's on the direction it came off. And one comes out with the counterbalance shaft, which this broken one was what started this whole process. And it's underneath of this one that ain't broke. It's opportune time to stick new bearings in it and seals while you got it apart. This is a K20 Z3. Be sure and keep track of all your dowel pins. There's 3 in it. 1, 2, and 3. This is a P&N 3 transmission. I'm at the end of the main shaft. This bearing kind of slides right off. Some needle bearings coming with it, so I'll have to keep an eye on that. Get it off of that sleeve. I don't want them coming out just per se just yet. If you put new bearings in it, toss these. If not, the V1 is facing up. I got the gear off and check the wheel holes for debris. It has a sleeve and needle bearing set that comes up with it, and then the synchronizer assembly. That oil hole had brass shavings in it. I'm going to slip that off the outer part, or shift fork sleeve, and set it on top of the gear. Went ahead and took the synchronizers and gears apart from the main shaft and changed both of the synchro springs on 3rd and 4th synchronizer assembly. The sleeve on the synchronizer had some burrs in it, which probably dislodged this clip or broke it, or the other one. This is a 4th gear synchro spring, and I took it really needed a new sleeve, but it's kind of economy, so I took a carbide burr and ground the burrs off the inside of the sleeve. So anyway, went ahead and degreased the case and all the holes in it, washed out all the debris, and this cap plug hole for the clip that retains the counterbalance shaft bearing, and the holes for the detent balls, the hole for the reverse idler gear pin, and this flange up here for the shift assembly. And then I shoved cardboard or paper down in the hole to keep debris out. So I degreased the case. Just stood it up on its side and dropped the case down on it. It fed right into it. And then tightened all these case bolts down to 20 foot-pounds and put the hangers back on it. And it had 2 long bolts, one here and one exactly opposite on the bottom. But it was pretty uneventful, other than the fact that this bearing, I let it set for overnight and let the silicone set up, and I put it on pretty heavy. I kind of shaved some of it off, but that bead will be like that on the inside too, so it'll be a good seal. And after it's set up overnight, I put the transmission on its side, and this bearing, the weight of the counterbalance shaft, it just kind of walked itself there and snap this clip back in around that seat on the race. Make sure it's seated and that this clip moves freely in there. And I degreased this detent bolt. I hold the shifter assembly down. I took some 220 sandpaper and sanded the gristle out of that speed sensor hole. And make sure the clutch splines are clean. And there's no burrs on the end of the shaft for the pilot bushing. And make sure the area around the drive axle seals are clean, if not replaced. And I'll be putting some grease on this shift fork ball. And had the shift fork welded up and ground it down accordingly. So it should do its thing. It's nice and level, so. And I need some grease here where the slave cylinder sits. And this ball here. And I got a couple of holes I need to tap out. this front torque bracket for the engine mount. Threads is messed up on the first half of it, and of course the starter bolt. Drug a couple aluminum threads through the hole and laid a bunch of them down. It's nice. That is a 125 pitch thread by 12 millimeter tap. It's just some good synthetic grease. Make sure the spring and the ball's in there. Hey, you can put some silicone underneath those washers if you want. If I have a problem with it, I can pull them back out and re-silicone them. I don't supposed to use all new washers on it anyway. Just tighten down to 29 foot-pounds. This cap plug, put a bead of silicone around the upper threads toward the head of it, and screw it down to 25 foot-pounds. Make sure it's clean in there. Just kind of push the silicone around through, didn't it? Well, I've got a good bead all the way around, so it ain't gonna leak. Main thing. I installed the reverse idler gear bolt. There's the pin, the through pin bolt for the reverse idler pin. And it tightened down to 33 foot-pounds. Oh, the finger's back now. Got a good bead of silicone on the inside. Should seal the case up pretty good. It's really hard to keep the dirt out of them. Hey, while this gizmo's up here on its side, I went ahead and put a new copper sealing ring on the drain plug, and spread a little hock and pucky on underneath of it and on the face where it's going to seal, just as a little backup. Never hurts. And the drain plug tightens down to 29 foot-pounds, and you go ahead and crack this level plug open, because when it's full of fluid it will be running out this hole. And I think it's a fill hole in the back, but I'm going to use the shifter to fill it full of fluid, the shifter hole, and that'll take care of business. Mouse over the video and hit the circle I to continue to the next part of the video.